Chapter 1. The Divorce Aftermath. Larry Kraft had never been good at dramatic exits. No slammed doors, no shouting matches, no cinematic speeches about betrayal and heartbreak. When his wife announced she was leaving, 9 months after they'd said, forever, he simply nodded, like she'd told him the weather forecast. She wanted to find herself, which apparently required a road trip with her friends and zero marital obligations. Larry didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't even ask what she was hoping to find that wasn't already in their shared apartment. Instead, he quietly filed the paperwork, signed where he was supposed to sign, and walked away without looking back. That was 2 years ago. Now, at 32, Larry had perfected the art of invisibility. He went to work, came home, ate dinner alone, and fell asleep to the comforting hum of late-night television. Dating? Not a chance. He had trust issues stacked like sandbags around his heart, and self-doubt that could fill a swimming pool. If he couldn't find happiness for himself, he could at least avoid stealing it from someone else. The world, however, had other plans. Larry sat at his kitchen table, staring at the blinking cursor on his laptop screen. His best friend Max had sent him a link titled, Weekend Getaway, Lakeside Resort for Singles and Friends. The exclamation point was offensive. He scrolled past glossy photos of smiling people holding wine glasses, kayaking, and laughing around bonfires. It looked like a brochure for happiness, a concept Larry had filed under mythical creatures, along with unicorns and people who enjoy tax season. His phone buzzed. Max, tell me you're looking at the link, Max said, skipping hello entirely. I'm looking, Larry replied, and I'm wondering if you've suffered a head injury. Come on, man, it's just a weekend. Fresh air, good food, maybe some fun. Fun, Larry repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. Define fun. Not sitting alone in your apartment watching reruns of shows that got canceled 10 years ago. Larry glanced at the muted TV in the background. A laugh track played over a joke he'd heard 100 times. I like this show. You like being safe, Max countered, which is fine, but you've been safe for 2 years. It's time to be, I don't know, mildly unsafe. Larry snorted. Mildly unsafe sounds like forgetting sunscreen. Larry, Max's voice softened. You've been through hell. I get it, but you're not broken. You're just stuck. This trip could help. Larry stared at the resort photo again. A group of people sat around a fire, their faces glowing with laughter. He imagined himself there, awkward, silent, counting the minutes until he could escape. I don't know, he said finally. Don't think. Just pack. I'll pick you up Friday. Max, Friday, Max repeated and hung up. Larry sighed. He hated how persuasive Max could be. It was like arguing with gravity. That night, Larry lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his marriage, the shortest one he'd ever heard of. 9 months. People kept houseplants longer than that. He remembered the humiliation of telling his parents, his friends, his co-workers, the pitying looks, the awkward silences, the jokes he made to deflect the sting. After that, he'd sworn off dating. Sworn off hope, really. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you believe in forever, and forever was apparently code for until I get bored. But Max was right about one thing. Larry was stuck. His life had become a loop: work, home, TV, sleep, repeat. Maybe a weekend away wouldn't kill him. Probably. Friday arrived too soon. Larry stood in his bedroom, staring at an open suitcase. Packing felt like preparing for battle. What did one wear to a lakeside resort? Did divorced men have a uniform? He tossed in jeans, t-shirts, a hoodie, and, after a moment's hesitation, a pair of swim trunks. Not because he planned to swim, but because Max would mock him if he didn't. As he zipped the suitcase, Larry muttered, "This is a terrible idea." Max's car pulled up at noon. Larry climbed in, bracing himself for a pep talk. "You look like you're going to a funeral," Max said, eyeing Larry's black hoodie. "Maybe I am," Larry replied. "The funeral of my dignity." Max grinned. "You'll thank me later." Larry doubted that. The drive was 3 hours of winding roads and Max's relentless optimism. Larry stared out the window, watching trees blur past, wondering if he could fake a sudden illness and turn back. "Just so you know," Max said casually, "there's a group dinner tonight." Larry groaned. "Fantastic. Nothing says relaxation like forced social interaction." "You might meet someone," Max teased. Larry shot him a look. "I'm not meeting anyone. I'm here for nature." "Nature," Max repeated, smirking. "Sure." Larry ignored him. When they finally arrived, the resort looked like something out of a magazine. Wooden cabins, a sparkling lake, and people milling about with the kind of joy that made Larry suspicious. As they checked in, Larry noticed a woman at the front desk laughing with the receptionist. Her laugh was bright, unguarded, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Larry looked away immediately. He wasn't here for that. He was here for nature, right? Chapter 2. The reluctant traveler. Larry Kraft had never been good at pretending enthusiasm. He tried once in college, clapping along at a concert he didn't care about, but his face betrayed him. Now, standing in the resort lobby with Max grinning like a motivational poster, Larry felt his expression sliding into its default setting, mild despair. The place was undeniably beautiful. Wooden beams stretched across the ceiling, sunlight poured through wide windows, and the scent of pine drifted in from the lake. People moved with purpose, checking in, laughing, hugging like they'd been waiting all year for this. Larry adjusted his hoodie and wondered if he could blend into the furniture. "Come on," Max said, slapping Larry's shoulder. "Let's get our keys. Dinner's at 7. "Dinner," Larry muttered. "The social gauntlet." Max ignored him, which was his superpower. He approached the front desk, chatting easily with the receptionist. Larry hung back, scanning the room like a man plotting an escape route. That's when he saw her again. The woman from earlier, the one with the laugh that sounded like sunlight, was leaning against the counter, talking to the same receptionist. She wore a denim jacket over a floral dress, camera strap slung across her shoulder. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, a few strands framing her face like it was all part of the plan. She laughed again, and Larry felt something shift in his chest, like a door creaking open after years of rust. He looked away immediately. "Nope, not going there." Max returned, waving 2 keycards. "Cabin 12. Let's go." Larry followed him out, dragging his suitcase like it weighed 100 pounds. The cabins were lined along a gravel path, each with a porch swing and flower boxes that looked aggressively cheerful. Larry's cabin smelled faintly of cedar and optimism. He hated it. "Nice, right?" Max said, tossing his bag onto a bed. "Sure," Larry replied, "if you're into rustic charm and the crushing weight of expectation." Max laughed. "You're impossible." Larry sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the suitcase. He'd packed like a man preparing for exile: jeans, t-shirts, hoodie, swim trunks he'd never use. He wondered if there was a prize for most reluctant guest. He'd win. The afternoon passed in a blur of unpacking and pretending to relax. Larry scrolled through his phone, checked emails he didn't care about, and avoided eye contact with the world outside his window. At 6:30, Max appeared in the doorway, dressed like someone who believed in fun. Crisp shirt, easy smile. "Ready?" Max asked. "No," Larry said. "Too bad." Max tossed him a clean shirt. "Put this on. You look like you're about to rob the place." Larry sighed but changed. The shirt felt like a costume. He followed Max down the path toward the dining hall, rehearsing excuses in his head. "Sorry, I'm allergic to joy. Sorry, I have a rare condition where small talk causes internal bleeding." The dining hall was buzzing with conversation. Long tables were set with candles and pitchers of water. People laughed, clinked glasses, and radiated the kind of warmth Larry found suspicious. He scanned for the least populated table, but Max steered him toward the center like a man delivering a sacrifice. "Hey, everyone," Max said, sliding into a seat. "This is Larry." Larry nodded stiffly. "Hi." Introductions blurred together, names, hometowns, hobbies. Larry smiled when required, said "nice to meet you," like a robot, and prayed for invisibility. Then he heard that laugh again. She was at the far end of the table, camera resting beside her plate. When she looked up, their eyes met for half a second. Larry looked away so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. Dinner was a minefield of small talk. Someone asked Larry what he did for fun. He almost said, "Avoid situations like this," but settled on reading. Another asked if he liked hiking. He said, "I like flat surfaces." Max kicked him under the table. Halfway through the meal, the woman with the camera spoke. "So, Larry," she said, voice light, curious, "what brings you here?" Larry froze. Words scattered like startled birds. Nature," he said finally. She smiled. "Nature? That's a vague." Larry shrugged. "Trees, lakes, the usual." Her smile widened, and Larry felt heat creep up his neck. He wanted to disappear into his mashed potatoes. "I'm Emma," she said. "Photography workshop." "Cool," Larry replied, because his brain had apparently filed for early retirement. Emma tilted her head. "Do you like photography?" Larry hesitated. "I like pictures of things." Max groaned audibly. Emma laughed, a bright, unguarded sound that made Larry's chest tighten. He stared at his plate, wondering if it was possible to drown in gravy. After dinner, people drifted toward the lounge for drinks. Larry made a beeline for the door, but Max intercepted him. "Where are you going?" Max asked. "Back to the cabin," Larry said. "To a commune with nature." Max rolled his eyes. "You talked to Emma." "I said 3 words. Progress," Max said. "Come on. Stay for 1 drink." Larry hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm good." Max sighed. "Fine. But tomorrow you're doing something fun." Larry didn't ask what. He didn't want to know. Back in the cabin, Larry sat on the porch swing, staring at the lake. The water shimmered under the moonlight, calm and endless. He thought about Emma's laugh, the way it cut through the noise like a melody he hadn't heard in years. He hated that he noticed. He hated that part of him, small, stubborn, wanted to hear it again. Larry leaned back, closing his eyes. "Terrible idea," he muttered. But for the first time in 2 years, the idea didn't feel entirely terrible. Chapter 3 Meet Emma. Larry Kraft had a theory. Mornings were designed to punish people who didn't want to be social. The sun was too cheerful, the birds too smug, and the smell of fresh coffee too optimistic. He sat at a corner table in the resort cafe, nursing a cup like it was a shield against humanity. Max had vanished, probably off making friends or signing up for activities Larry would hate. Larry scrolled through his phone, pretending to be busy, when a shadow fell across his table. "Mind if I sit?" a voice asked. Larry looked up and froze. Emma. Denim jacket, messy bun, camera strap slung across her shoulder like an accessory she was born with. She held a steaming mug and wore a smile that could disarm cynics. Larry blinked. Sure." She slid into the chair opposite him, setting her mug down with a soft clink. "You looked like you were having a very intense conversation with your phone." Larry shrugged. "We're close." Emma laughed, a sound so bright it made the cafe feel warmer. Larry hated that he noticed. He hated even more that he liked it. "So," she said, stirring her coffee. "Nature guy, right?" Larry frowned. "Nature guy. That's what you said last night. You're here for nature." "Oh, yeah." He cleared his throat. "Trees, lakes, the usual." Emma tilted her head, amused. "You don't strike me as the hiking type." "I'm more of a sitting type," Larry admitted. "Preferably indoors." Emma grinned. "Then you're in the wrong place." Larry sipped his coffee, buying time. "What about you?" "Photography workshop." "Yep." She tapped the camera strap. "I love capturing moments. Little things people miss." Larry nodded, though he didn't really get it. He'd spent most of his life avoiding moments, not immortalizing them. Emma leaned forward slightly. "So, Larry, what do you do when you're not communing with nature?" Larry hesitated. "I work in IT." "Ah," Emma said, eyes twinkling. "The mysterious world of passwords and panic." Larry smirked despite himself. "Pretty much." Emma studied him for a beat, then smiled. "You're hard to read." Larry stiffened. "That's intentional." Emma laughed again, and Larry felt something loosen in his chest. He didn't know if it was good or dangerous. They talked for a while about coffee, cameras, and why resort muffins were suspiciously perfect. Larry found himself saying more than he planned, though nothing personal. Emma had a way of making silence feel safe, like it wasn't a trap. When she finally stood, slinging her camera over her shoulder, Larry felt an odd pang of disappointment. "Workshop starts in 10, she said. "You should come by later. We're doing outdoor shots." Larry blinked. "Me? Outdoors?" Emma grinned. "You might survive." Before he could respond, she was gone, walking toward a group of people with easy confidence. Larry watched her go, then muttered under his breath, "Terrible idea." But the thought of seeing her again didn't feel entirely terrible. The rest of the morning was a blur of avoidance. Larry wandered the resort, pretending to admire trees while mostly thinking about Emma. He hated that. He'd spent 2 years building walls, and now one laugh was cracking the foundation. By noon, Max found him near the lake, hands in his pockets. "There you are," Max said. "Guess what?" Larry groaned. "What?" "I signed us up for kayaking." Larry stared. "Kayaking?" "Yep. 2 o'clock. It'll be fun." "Define fun," Larry said flatly. Max grinned. "Emma's going." Larry's stomach did something weird, like a roller coaster he didn't buy tickets for. He scowled. "That's not a selling point." Max smirked. "Sure." Larry looked at the lake, calm and endless. Kayaking sounded like a nightmare, but the idea of Emma laughing again, maybe at him, maybe with him, was enough to make him hesitate. "Fine," he muttered. "But if I drown, you're explaining it to my parents." Max clapped his shoulder. "Deal." Chapter 4, Forced Proximity. Larry Kraft had a short list of things he considered dangerous. Skydiving, trusting people, and any activity that involved water and balance. Kayaking checked 2 of those boxes. He stood on the dock, staring at the sleek boats lined up like smug little sharks. The lake shimmered under the afternoon sun, calm and inviting, like a con artist with good hair. "This is a terrible idea," Larry muttered. Max grinned beside him, already wearing a life vest like he was auditioning for a survival commercial. "Relax. It's easy. You paddle, you float, you don't die." "Comforting," Larry said flatly. Before Max could reply, a voice cut through the chatter. Bright, warm, and far too familiar. "Hey, nature guy." Larry turned, and there she was, Emma, in a faded t-shirt and shorts, hair pulled back, camera nowhere in sight. She wore her life vest like it was part of the outfit, and somehow made it look good. Larry's brain short-circuited. Hi." Emma smiled, stepping closer. "You ready?" "For what?" Larry asked, though the answer was obvious. "For kayaking," Emma said, eyes twinkling. "You're paired with me." Larry blinked. "Paired?" Max clapped him on the back. "Surprise." Larry shot him a look that could curdle milk. Max just grinned wider. Emma laughed, oblivious to Larry's internal meltdown. "Come on. It'll be fun." Larry wanted to say define fun, but the word stuck in his throat. Instead, he followed her to the edge of the dock like a man walking to his doom. The kayak wobbled as Larry climbed in, gripping the sides like they were the last solid objects on Earth. Emma slid in behind him with effortless grace. "Relax," she said, voice light. "It's stable." "Stable is a relative term," Larry muttered, staring at the water like it was plotting against him. Emma laughed, a sound that made the lake seem less threatening. "You're tense." "I'm cautious," Larry corrected. "There's a difference." "Sure," Emma said, amusement dripping from every syllable. "Start paddling, cautious." Larry dipped the paddle into the water, awkward and stiff. The kayak lurched forward like a reluctant mule. Emma paddled smoothly behind him, steering with ease. "You're doing great," she said. Larry snorted. "You're lying." "Maybe a little," Emma admitted, laughing again. They glided across the lake. Well, Emma glided. Larry mostly flailed. Every time the kayak tilted, his heart jumped like a cat in a thunderstorm. "Why do people do this for fun?" Larry grumbled. "Because it's peaceful," Emma said, dipping her paddle with rhythmic grace. "Look around." Larry looked. The lake stretched like glass, reflecting the sky in perfect blue. Trees framed the horizon, their leaves whispering in the breeze. Birds skimmed the surface, wings flashing silver. It was beautiful, annoyingly beautiful. Larry sighed. "Fine. It's okay." Emma grinned. High praise. Halfway across, Emma suggested they stop paddling. Larry froze. "Stop? As in, float?" "Yes," Emma said, amused. "The water's calm." Larry hesitated, then let the paddle rest. The kayak drifted gently, rocking like a cradle. Emma leaned back, face tilted toward the sun. "This," she said softly, "is why I love it." Larry watched her for a moment. The way the light touched her hair, the easy curve of her smile. Something stirred in his chest, something he'd buried under layers of caution and cynicism. He looked away quickly, focusing on the water. "So, photography," he said, grasping for neutral ground. "Why that?" Emma opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "Because moments matter. People rush through life and miss the little things. The way sunlight hits a leaf, or how someone smiles when they're not thinking about it." Larry swallowed. "Sounds nice." Emma tilted her head. "You don't believe that?" Larry hesitated. "I used to." Emma studied him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What happened?" Larry gripped the paddle, knuckles white. "Life." Emma didn't push. She just smiled. A quiet, understanding smile, and Larry felt something shift inside him. The return trip was easier. Larry paddled with less panic, more rhythm. Emma teased him about his progress, and he pretended to be offended. When they reached the dock, Larry climbed out with all the grace of a newborn giraffe. Emma laughed so hard she nearly dropped her paddle. "Glad I could amuse you," Larry said dryly. "You're adorable," Emma said, grinning. Larry froze. Adorable? He hadn't been called that since. Ever. Emma winked and walked off, leaving Larry standing on the dock, heart thudding like he'd just run a marathon. That night, Larry lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Emma's laugh, her smile, the way she said adorable like it was a fact, not an insult. He hated that he cared. He hated that part of him, small, stubborn, wanted to hear her say it again. Larry closed his eyes, muttering to the darkness, "Terrible idea." But the idea didn't feel terrible at all. Chapter 5. The dinner disaster. Larry Kraft had a plan. Keep his head down, eat quietly, and escape before anyone noticed him. Unfortunately, plans rarely survive contact with reality, especially when Max is involved. The dining hall was buzzing when Larry walked in. Long tables glowed under soft lights, candles flickering like they were mocking his anxiety. People laughed, clinked glasses, and radiated the kind of warmth Larry found suspicious. He scanned for an empty corner, but Max intercepted him like a linebacker. "Over here," Max said, steering him toward the center table. "Prime spot." "Prime for what?" Larry muttered. "Public humiliation?" Max grinned. "Socializing." Larry groaned but sat down, shoulders tight. He focused on the bread basket like it held the secrets of the universe. Introductions started immediately. A woman across the table asked Larry what he did for fun. He almost said avoid situations like this but settled on reading. "Oh, what kind of books?" she asked brightly. Larry hesitated. "Ones with words." Max kicked him under the table. Larry winced. Another man chimed in. "You like hiking?" "I like flat surfaces," Larry said. "Preferably indoors." Laughter rippled around the table. Good-natured, but Larry felt heat crawl up his neck. He stabbed his salad like it had wronged him. Halfway through the meal, the universe decided to test him further. Emma slid into the empty seat across from him, her smile easy, her presence like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Hey, nature guy," she said, eyes sparkling. "Survived kayaking?" "Barely," Larry replied, trying for casual and landing somewhere near awkward. Emma laughed, a sound that made the candles seem brighter. "You did great." Larry snorted. "You weren't watching the same disaster I was." Emma grinned. "You didn't drown. That's a win." Larry opened his mouth to reply, but someone at the table beat him to it. "So, Emma, you're the photographer, right?" Yep, Emma said, turning toward them. Capturing moments. Making memories. Larry listened, pretending to focus on his plate. He hated how easily she charmed people. How her laugh slid under his defenses like sunlight through blinds. Then Emma looked back at him. What about you, Larry? Any hobbies? Larry froze. Words scattered like startled birds. IT. Emma tilted her head, amused. That's not a hobby. Larry cleared his throat. Right. I read. Emma smiled. Anything good? Larry hesitated. Instruction manuals. The table erupted in laughter. Larry wanted to crawl under it. Emma laughed too, but softer, like she wasn't mocking him. You're funny, she said. Larry blinked. Funny? He hadn't been called that since. Ever. The rest of dinner was a blur of small talk and silent panic. Larry tried to contribute, failed spectacularly, and resorted to nodding like a bobblehead. Every time Emma laughed, his chest tightened. Every time she smiled, his brain short-circuited. When dessert arrived, Larry made his move. He stood, muttering something about fresh air, and slipped out before Max could stop him. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. Larry walked toward the lake, hands shoved in his pockets, heart thudding like he'd just escaped a crime scene. He hated this, hated how Emma's laugh lingered in his head, how her smile felt like a challenge he wasn't ready for. He'd spent 2 years building walls, and now one woman was knocking like she owned the place. Larry stared at the water, moonlight rippling across its surface. He whispered to the dark, terrible idea, but the idea didn't feel terrible at all. Chapter 6. The Unexpected Confession. Larry Kraft had never understood the appeal of bonfires. Fire was unpredictable. Fire was dangerous. Fire was social. And yet, here he was, standing on the edge of a glowing circle of logs and laughter, clutching a plastic cup like it was a lifeline. The flames crackled, sending sparks into the night sky. People lounged on benches and blankets, voices mingling with the soft strum of a guitar. Larry hovered at the perimeter, debating whether to sit or fake a sudden illness. Nature guy. He turned, and there she was, Emma, hair loose now, catching the firelight like strands of copper. She wore a hoodie over her dress, casual and effortless, and carried a smile that made Larry's pulse trip over itself. You made it, she said, sliding onto the bench beside him before he could protest. Larry cleared his throat. Max dragged me. Emma grinned. Good for Max. Larry stared at the fire, trying not to stare at her. So, bonfires. Big fan. Emma shrugged. I like the quiet moments. The way people open up when the world feels smaller. Larry snorted softly. Open up, right? Emma tilted her head. You don't. Larry hesitated. Not usually. Emma smiled, not pushing. They sat in silence for a while, watching flames dance. The guitar player shifted into a slow tune, voices humming along. Larry felt the weight of the night pressing in, warm, intimate, dangerous. Emma spoke first. You ever notice how fire makes people honest? Larry frowned. Honest? Yeah. She gestured at the circle. Something about the glow, the dark around us. People say things they wouldn't in daylight. Larry stared at the flames, their restless flicker. Sounds risky. Emma laughed softly. Sometimes risk is worth it. Larry didn't answer. He couldn't. His chest felt tight, like words were clawing to get out but didn't know the way. Emma shifted, turning toward him. So, Larry, what's your story? Larry froze. Story. Everyone has one, Emma said gently. Why you're here. Why you look like you'd rather be anywhere else. Larry gripped his cup, knuckles white. He could lie. He could deflect. He could make a joke about mosquitoes. But something in her voice, soft, steady, made him want to tell the truth. He exhaled slowly. I was married. Emma blinked, surprised but not judgmental. Oh, for 9 months, Larry added, bitterness curling around the words. Shortest marriage I've ever heard of. Emma's brows lifted. 9 months. Larry nodded, staring at the fire. She decided forever wasn't for her. Took a road trip to find herself. I didn't argue. Just signed the papers. Emma was quiet for a moment. That must have hurt. Larry laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Humiliating, mostly. Everyone knew. Couldn't even make it a year. Emma's gaze softened. That doesn't mean you failed. Larry shrugged. Feels like it. Silence stretched, filled by the crackle of flames and distant laughter. Larry hated how raw he felt, how exposed. But Emma didn't pity him. She didn't offer cliches or empty comfort. She just listened. Finally, she spoke. You know what I think? Larry glanced at her warily. What? Emma smiled faintly. You're braver than you think. Larry blinked. Brave. You showed up, Emma said simply. You could have stayed home, hiding behind your walls. But you're here. That counts. Larry stared at her, words lodged in his throat. He wanted to argue but couldn't, because for the first time in 2 years, he wondered if she might be right. Later, when the fire burned low and people drifted away, Larry walked back to his cabin alone. The night was cool, stars scattered like secrets across the sky. He thought about Emma's voice, her smile, the way she said brave like it was a fact. He whispered to the dark, terrible idea, but the idea didn't feel terrible at all. Chapter 7. The photo shoot. Larry Kraft had a short list of things he never expected to do in his life. Run a marathon, join a reality show, and pose for a photography project. Yet here he was, standing in a sunlit meadow with Emma adjusting her camera like a general preparing for battle. This is a terrible idea, Larry muttered for the 100th time. Emma grinned, her hair catching the breeze. Relax. It's just a few shots. A few shots of what? My impending humiliation. Emma laughed, a sound that made the meadow feel warmer. You're dramatic. Larry shoved his hands in his pockets. I'm realistic. Emma tilted her head, studying him through the lens. You're stiff. I'm cautious, Larry corrected. There's a difference. Sure, Emma said, amusement dripping from every syllable. Lose the hoodie. Larry blinked. What? The hoodie? Emma repeated. It's hiding you. That's the point, Larry said flatly. Emma stepped closer, eyes twinkling. Come on, trust me. Larry hesitated, then peeled off the hoodie like he was surrendering a shield. The breeze brushed his arms, and he felt exposed in more ways than one. Better, Emma said softly, lifting the camera. Now, look at me. Larry froze. Look at you. Yes, Emma said, voice gentle but firm. Not the trees. Not the ground. Me. Larry swallowed hard. He looked and immediately regretted it. Her eyes were steady, her smile easy, and something in his chest shifted like tectonic plates. Perfect, Emma murmured, snapping the first shot. The next 30 minutes were a blur of awkward poses and relentless teasing. Stop frowning, Emma said. I'm not frowning, Larry replied. You're frowning with your soul, Emma countered, laughing. Larry tried to relax, failed spectacularly, and ended up laughing too, real laughter, the kind that startled him with its unfamiliarity. Emma caught it instantly, camera clicking like applause. That, she said, lowering the lens. That's the shot. Larry blinked. Me, laughing? Emma smiled. You look alive. Larry stared at her, words tangled in his throat. He wanted to say something, anything, but the moment felt too fragile to touch. When they finished, Emma showed him the photos. Larry braced for disaster, but what he saw made him pause. He looked different. Not broken. Not bitter. Just a man standing in sunlight, smiling like he'd forgotten how heavy the world was. Larry swallowed hard. That's not terrible. Emma grinned. High praise. Larry handed back the camera, heart thudding. Thanks. For what? Emma asked. For reminding me, Larry said quietly. Emma tilted her head. Reminding you of what? Larry hesitated, then smiled faintly. That I'm still here. Emma's eyes softened, and for a moment, the world felt smaller, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous. That night, Larry lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Emma's laugh, her smile, the way she said look at me like it was the simplest thing in the world. He whispered to the dark, terrible idea, but the idea didn't feel terrible at all. Chapter 8. The setback. Larry Kraft had been feeling something he hadn't felt in years, momentum. Not the kind that came from work deadlines or gym memberships he never used, but the quiet, dangerous kind, the kind that made him look forward to mornings instead of dreading them. Emma had done that. Her laugh, her smile, the way she saw the world like it was worth photographing. For the first time since his marriage imploded, Larry felt lighter, almost hopeful, which, of course, meant the universe was about to punch him in the gut. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Larry had wandered into the lounge, pretending to look for coffee but really hoping to run into Emma. He found her, just not the way he wanted. She was sitting on a couch near the window, talking to another woman from the photography workshop. Larry froze when he heard his name. Larry? Emma laughed softly. He's sweet, but honestly, I'm not looking for anything serious. The words hit like a slap. Larry stood there, invisible, heart thudding against his ribs. Emma kept talking, unaware of the wreckage she'd just caused. I came here to clear my head, you know? After my breakup, I just want to have fun, meet people, take pictures. No pressure. The other woman nodded, murmuring something Larry didn't hear. His ears were ringing too loud. Not looking for anything serious. Larry backed away before they could see him, moving like a man escaping a crime scene. He didn't stop until he was outside, the cold air biting his skin. He walked toward the lake, hands shoved deep in his pockets, thoughts spiraling like leaves in a storm. Of course she wasn't looking for anything serious. Why would she? She was bright, alive, unbroken. He was him. The guy who couldn't make a marriage last 9 months. The guy who built walls and called them safety. Larry stared at the water, its surface calm and indifferent. He felt stupid. Stupid for thinking this could be something. Stupid for letting hope sneak past his defenses. He whispered to the empty air. Terrible idea. This time it felt true. That evening Larry skipped dinner. He stayed in the cabin, lights off, listening to the muffled hum of laughter drifting from the dining hall. Every sound felt like a reminder of what he wasn't. Easy, charming, fearless. Max knocked once, twice, then gave up. Larry didn't answer. He didn't want pep talks. He didn't want hope. He wanted silence. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Emma's words until they carved themselves into his bones. Not looking for anything serious. Larry closed his eyes, and for the first time since arriving, he wished he'd never come. Chapter 9, The Big Gesture. Larry Kraft had never been good at pep talks, giving them or receiving them. So when Max barged into the cabin the next morning, all bright-eyed and annoyingly optimistic, Larry braced for impact. Okay, Max said, hands on hips. What's your deal? Larry didn't look up from his coffee. My deal? You skipped dinner. You skipped drinks. You skipped being a human. Spill. Larry sighed, staring into the mug like it held answers. Emma doesn't want anything serious. Max blinked. And, Larry said, voice flat, I'm not built for casual. Max sat on the edge of the bed, studying him. So you're just giving up? Larry shrugged. Seems logical. Max snorted. Logical? Larry, you've been hiding behind logic for 2 years. How's that working out? Larry didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. Max leaned forward. Look, man, you like her. Larry hesitated. I don't know. Yes, you do, Max said firmly. You light up when she's around. You laugh. Actual laughter. Not that sarcastic grunt you call humor. You're alive. Larry stared at the floor, throat tight. She said she's not looking for anything serious. Max shrugged. So? That doesn't mean she doesn't want someone real. Someone who shows up. Larry frowned. Shows up. Max grinned. Do something. Take a risk. Make her see you're worth it. Larry laughed bitterly. What am I supposed to do? Sing under her window? Please don't, Max said quickly. But, you know what she loves. Larry blinked. Photography. Exactly, Max said, eyes gleaming. Use that. Larry stared at him, gears turning slowly. You want me to what? Buy her a camera? No, Max said, shaking his head. Make something. Something that says you've been paying attention. Larry sat back, heart thudding. He hated this. Hated how hope was creeping in like sunlight through cracks. But he couldn't ignore the truth. He wanted to try. For the first time in 2 years, he wanted to fight for something. The idea came together in fragments. Photos Emma had taken of the lake, the bonfire, the meadow where he'd laughed like a man rediscovering oxygen. Larry spent the afternoon gathering prints from the workshop display, borrowing supplies, and arranging them in a collage that told a story. Her story, his story, their moments stitched together like a quiet confession. At the center, he placed a photo Emma had taken of him, the one where he was laughing, sunlight on his face. Beneath it, he wrote in careful, uneven letters, I'd like to be in the next chapter. By sunset, Larry stood outside Emma's cabin, heart pounding like a drumline. He knocked once, twice, and considered running before the door opened. Emma appeared, hair tousled, camera in hand. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and the collage in his arms. Larry, she said softly. What is this? Larry swallowed hard. It's a yes, or moments. Yours. Mine. He broke off, words tangled in panic. I wanted you to know I'm here. Not for casual. Not for games. For real. Emma stared at the collage, then at him. Silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Finally, she smiled. A slow, luminous smile that made Larry's knees weak. You're something else, you know that? Larry blinked. Is that good? Emma laughed, stepping closer. It's perfect. And then, before Larry could overthink it, she kissed him. Soft, sure like a promise. Later, as they walked by the lake, fingers intertwined, Larry whispered to the night, terrible idea, but this time it felt like the best idea he'd ever had. Chapter 10. The resolution. Larry Kraft had never believed in perfect moments. Life was messy, unpredictable, and usually disappointing. But standing by the lake with Emma's hand in his, moonlight spilling across the water like silver paint, Larry wondered if he'd been wrong. Her kiss still lingered, soft, sure, and terrifying in its simplicity. It wasn't fireworks or movie magic. It was something better, real. They walked in silence for a while, the night humming with crickets and distant laughter from the lodge. Larry's thoughts were a storm, hope colliding with fear, joy tangled with doubt. He wanted to speak, but words felt fragile, like glass he might drop. Emma broke the silence first. You know, she said softly, I didn't expect this. Larry glanced at her. This? Emma smiled faintly. You. I came here to clear my head, not find someone. Larry swallowed hard. You said you weren't looking for anything serious. Emma nodded. I wasn't. But then you showed up with that collage and, God, Larry, no one's ever done something like that for me. Larry stared at the ground, heart pounding. I didn't do it to impress you. Emma squeezed his hand. I know. That's why it matters. They stopped at the edge of the dock, the lake stretching out like a sheet of glass. Emma turned to face him, her eyes steady, her smile soft. So, she said, what now? Larry blinked. What now? Emma laughed gently. You're the one who wrote next chapter. What does that look like? Larry hesitated, fear clawing at his ribs. He'd spent 2 years avoiding this question, building walls so high he forgot what doors looked like. But Emma was here, warm, real, patient, and for the first time he wanted to answer. It looks like coffee, Larry said slowly, and walks, and me trying not to screw it up. Emma's smile widened. Sounds like a good start. Larry exhaled, tension melting like frost in sunlight. He didn't have to promise forever. He didn't have to pretend certainty. He just had to show up. And for the first time in years, that felt possible. Later, back at the cabin, Larry lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He thought about the man he'd been, the one who hid behind sarcasm and solitude, and the man he was becoming. Not fixed, not fearless, but willing. He whispered to the dark, "Terrible idea," and smiled because it wasn't. Not anymore. Epilogue. 6 months later, the road trip. Larry Kraft had never imagined himself on a road trip again. The last time someone said road trip, his marriage ended in a blaze of existential self-discovery. But this time was different. This time, Emma was in the passenger seat, feet on the dashboard, camera in her lap, humming along to a playlist that was 80% songs Larry didn't recognize. The car smelled faintly of coffee and optimism, 2 things Larry had learned to tolerate, even enjoy. He glanced at Emma, her hair whipping in the breeze from the open window, and felt that strange, stubborn warmth in his chest. The one that said, "You didn't screw this up." Yet, Emma caught him looking and grinned. "What?" Larry shrugged. "Just wondering how I got here." Emma smirked. "You drove." Larry rolled his eyes. "Thanks for the clarity." She laughed, snapping a photo of him mid-eye roll. "Perfect. That's going in the album." Larry groaned. "Do I get veto power?" "Nope," Emma said cheerfully. "You're art now." Larry muttered something about cruel and unusual punishment, but secretly, he didn't mind. He liked the way she saw him, like he was worth capturing. They stopped at a scenic overlook, the kind that made postcards jealous. Emma hopped out, camera swinging, while Larry wrestled with the tripod like it was a wild animal. "You sure this thing won't collapse?" Larry asked, eyeing the spindly legs. Emma grinned. "Trust me." Larry smirked. "Dangerous words." Emma laughed, adjusting the lens. "You're getting better at this." "At what?" "Being your unpaid assistant." "At living?" Emma said softly, and the words hit Larry like sunlight through clouds. He looked at her, really looked, and felt that old fear stir, the one that whispered about failure and heartbreak. But then Emma smiled, steady and sure, and the fear quieted. Larry stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You know," he said, voice low, "6 months ago, I thought this was a terrible idea." Emma tilted her head. "And now?" Larry smiled faintly. "Now I think it's the best mistake I ever made." Emma laughed, looping her arms around his neck. "Not a mistake." Larry kissed her, quick, certain, like punctuation at the end of a sentence he'd been writing for years. When they broke apart, Emma snapped another photo, grinning. "For the album," she said. Larry groaned. "You're relentless." Emma winked. "You love it." Larry didn't argue, because she was right. As they packed up, Larry glanced at the horizon. Wide, open, full of roads he hadn't traveled. For the first time in years, he didn't dread what came next. He didn't need guarantees or forever. He just needed this. Emma, laughter, and the messy, beautiful risk of being alive. He whispered to the wind, smiling, "Terrible idea," and laughed because it wasn't. Not anymore.